Good morning guys and welcome back to Bareham Engines. Right, so first things first, this morning I brought the van over here and I'm just about to clean it and I've noticed there's a bit of trim missing. I'm absolutely devastated. So this bit of trim goes underneath the fuel cap and obviously pushes on with 4 poppers or whatever they are. But it looks to me like someone's opened the back door and maybe knocked it with their foot on the way out. I don't know, one of the kids. But yeah, furious about that, guys. So first things first this morning, I'm going to get onto John Burnell at Tour Garages and see if we can replace that. But I have me doubts on the colour, to be honest. But there we go. Anyway, so we're looking a little bit more organised around here at the moment. Paul is, what's he in the process of? I think we're waiting for a couple of bits on the Jag, but he is cracking on with this BMW here. We've just had the oil pump turn up, brand new oil pump. We've got the new Vanos units, all the new timing chain kit, and I think what else we were waiting for is the oil pump chain kit with the back plate and whatever, but that is genuine. So we couldn't get that aftermarket. So yeah, pretty much got everything, guys. The only thing that I have had to order, which we haven't got, is the 2 front Vanos pulley bolts. So they should be here tomorrow. I am just waiting for a couple of liners for this set of A10 BSA barrels. I know there's a lot of you guys that watch that are into these old British motorcycles. And this is one thing that we've done quite a few times in the past. So we've got the A10 barrels here, obviously bored to maximum, need to go back to standard. Got a standard set of pistons here. So what we do is we liner these. So I've found an off-the-shelf liner which does the job. So there's probably about a millimetre to come out of the centre of the new liners once they're in to go back to standard, which is absolutely ideal. So these are a straight liner. They're not a flange liner, and we're not doing them to a step down the bottom, and there's a reason for that. So we've got to do them a nice interference fit. So these need to end up from the face to the bottom. They need to end up about, I think it's 6 inches. The liners that I've chose are 8 inches, so we're going to have to trim those down, which is fine. But as you can see here, the cast-in liner originally comes to a height of 47 mil. But because I have to bore them out for the liners, they go very, very thin. So what I do is I machine them down, as you can see here. So we just sort of leave in the base here. We take all the thinness down, take them right down, and then end up with a 47 mil height from the new liners. And then we've got the cutouts to go in for the con rods. So what we'll do is, as soon as those liners turn up today, hopefully, we'll push those in once they're trimmed down, and then I shall set them up on the mill and just mill in those cutouts for the con rods. Nice, easy sort of common mod that we do on these guys. Takes your barrels back to standard. I should have those in a bit and we can get those barrels finished. This Cosworth head here is the one that's been sitting on the bench for quite a while we were waiting for welding on it. So it had quite extensive welding on the water jackets on this far end, so the exhaust side. These Cosworths are renowned for that. If they're left with water, no antifreeze, they can corrode like buggery. So what we do is dig it all out, weld it all up, trim it down to almost the face, and then sometimes we have to keep going back and welding it. But the only trouble is with this cylinder head is it's face down to its absolute maximum, to be honest with you, and so is the block face. So head gasket wise, we've had to go for a Cometic 2.5mm head gasket, which is, you know, the maximum you can do. So we can't afford to take any more off this, really. So basically what we've done, you can see here, got a load of sort of chemical metal in it. Now all that is where the aluminium goes really nasty, it does sort of leave some blow holes here, which don't matter. They're not going to affect the sort of sealing of the gasket, but visibly what I do is I just run a bit of just smear some of this chemical metal over it, let that go off overnight, just give it a very light lick, and that will just seal any little blowholes that are there. It's only visual really, but that's all we do. We would dig it out and keep welding, but as I say, we can't afford to get this too hot and take too much more off it. So unfortunately, that's all we're left to do. But as you can see here, rather than have the open water jackets they normally have, I've just basically marked out off the gasket where the holes are and just drilled them. So although it's not as good as new, it's certainly going to be good enough.
Right, let's have a quick little look and see what Lee's doing in the workshop today. Makes a change from the office chair, mate, this does.
Doesn't it? Very rarely I get to go out of that chair, mate.
What do we have here then?
So we have parts from a Honda B18.
Oh, nice.
So how old are they?
B18, probably getting on the late 90s, late 90s.
What, the old Civic, is it?
Civic Integra, I think.
Integra?
I think Integra, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I think the 1600 was the Civic, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not really a complete Honda mad person, but I think, yeah, there's B6.
Good engine though, this. Very good engine.
Awesome new engine.
So this one is a friend of the lad that we did the last short engine on the BMW for. M55, maybe?
N something.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it's his mate. So this is turbocharged for a potential 600 horsepower, I think. And it looks like someone's done the machining, fairly extensive machining on the block.
Right.
Looks like it's had, I don't know whether it's had liners in it, but it's had the top machined and a brace bar put in a little bit, so it looks a little bit like when the dart and sleeves are in.
Yeah.
But they've put the crank in there, but obviously it was quite a while ago, so I think he wants us to just strip it, check all the weights, balance the rods, and maybe balance the crank assembly.
Yeah.
And then put the bottom end together.
So we've got forged pistons in and rods, obviously.
So we've got, now these rods are,
I've heard about these.
yeah, these are pretty good rods, to be honest with you. The spec of them, the material in that's brilliant.
Yeah.
They're a budget rod, but they, to be honest with you, I mean, I don't know about things like this with big power, but we've supplied them, put them in stuff, in the older stuff, race cars and that, and they seem to be pretty good. So
they can be better than a cast rod, anyway, aren't they? So.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what he wants to put in there. So we're just going to obviously check the size of these housings and balance them up. These are a Wiseco piston.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that they're a bit worried about is because the Wisecos tend to run a little bit bigger clearance.
Right.
And being turbocharged and running big boost, we probably want to run a bit more anyway.
So what piston, sort of 3/4 hour piston, the ball clearance thing, or?
Yeah, depending on obviously the diameter, because it's sort of, they go on about, what, 1 thou per inch of bore, something like that. We normally go 1/2 thou over anyway. So I've just got to measure the bores, just washing the block out there at the moment. But yeah, just a general run through, check all the sizes, make sure it's all going to be all right, really, mate.
Can have a quick look in the block. Make sure.
Go and have a little quick look.
Make sure the drains are in good order. Right, so this is quite a tricky little looking block, actually.
It does look pretty tricky, yeah. So obviously someone makes this. This is a steel brace that goes inside, because it's a bit like the Focus is this design. So you've got half open deck at the top, and probably halfway down the bore is the base of the water jacket.
So it's not a wet liner as such, but
no, not completely a wet liner. It's just an open top deck, right, really. Okay, yeah. So you've got a dry liner inside the aluminium. So this is a cast iron liner. I can't remember now whether the B18s have got that in or they've been put in.
No, I'm not sure.
More than likely been put in, they have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this obviously braces and just strengthens up the top, stops it from flexing and what have you. I expect that will probably have to be machined to put that in round here. But yeah, it's a pretty good brace, because the dart and sleeves have all this built into the top hat. So you machine the block out, all this will be a complete liner, and then that does the same sort of thing, but that's a very expensive process.
Beautiful.
So yeah, we've just got to check the bores on this, ignore the grotty aluminium outside, that always goes like that, doesn't it?
So it's just the block for this gentleman, not the cylinder head, is it?
Yeah, no cylinder head. I think we've just got to check the threads in these. We've obviously got the ARP stud and nut kit.
Yep.
Check the mains housing, because this has got like a a cradle, a brace sort of cradle really on the 6 centre studs for the mains. So we're just going to check the mains housing, make sure they're true. Check the crank, polish that, and balance it, and yeah.
Beautiful.
Hopefully, mate, should all be all right. And that's another one out of the way.
That'll lower John's blood pressure.
Yeah, until the next one comes in.
We are swamped.
Swamped, yeah.
Swamped.
Bless him.
Right, so quick little update on the BMW N52. All the timing chain assembly parts are turned up. So we've got this bottom chain assembly, which is a whole new unit, chain, guide, and we've got a new oil pump for this engine as well. So the oil pump, you get the new bolts as well, and you also get new bolts for the windows tray. So we fit all that. Pump's all bolted down, the windows tray is bolted down. This bottom chain assembly is fitted. We've also got the top chain assembly. So the top chain assembly is loosely fitted. I just stuck it in there just to sort of offer it up. And we have new Vanos units to fit as well. We're just waiting for the bolts to turn up on them, and then we can fit this whole thing properly. Right, so what's this bit of plasterboard in here, Lee, apart from propping up or hiding the Cosy engine behind it?
Yeah, that is leftovers from a home project, mate.
Yep.
And I'm just contemplating what we can do with that.
Right.
Because it cost a fortune to discard of it, so I'm sure there's something we can do with it. What do you reckon?
Well, we must discard of it in a correct manner.
Yes, of course.
So I
don't go fly tipping it outside the tip door.
No, it won't go down the drain either, unfortunately.
No.
Well, that bit might. We'll try later on, let you know.
Tried that, but what we're going to do with it?
I don't know. Build an office for John, shall we? New office for John. Is he over there? There he is.
There's John. Oh, here he is.
There he is.
So it's Thursday, guys, end of the day, and I have been cracking on with the Honda engine, as Paul showed you earlier. I've done all my checks. We've measured the crank. It's a standard crank. We've polished it, and the customer is going to send in the flywheel and the clutch so that we can balance the crank assembly before we go ahead and install it in the block. I have measured the bores, and the bores measure half a thou to a thou over what they should be really for these pistons. But bear in mind, we are going to be turbocharging this engine, and it's going to be big power. So that's going to be absolutely fine. And as you can see, it's all been freshly done. So what I'm doing, next step, obviously I've cleaned everything up now, checked all the bearings. They're all brand new bearings actually, although the customer did supply a couple of packs of other bearings if these ones are in any doubt, because obviously he's bought this thing like this, so he was unsure really as to what state it was in, because you know what it's like. Whenever they say it's all been done, it usually hasn't. But I've started to assemble the pistons and rods and sort of see what we've got. Now, first problem I came across, obviously I've checked all the rods, I've checked the housings, they all measure what they should do. I've never had any issues with these rods whatsoever. They're really good. But obviously they're not meant for these pistons really. These are for this engine. But the only one problem, and I did hear of this anyway, is that the small end width is sort of too much. When you put them in, they're right up against the side walls of the piston. There's still movement there, but there's no lateral movement for the rod. So what I've done is I've removed 0.5 mm off either side on this rod, and that gives us a nice, as you can see, nice lateral movement there, so the oil can get into the small end, and obviously allow for, we don't want that butting right up the side just in case there's, you know, we want the rod to align itself. So that's absolutely fine. And I checked the ring gaps. Rings are on the pistons. So this rod here, I've just loosely put it together, but I've got to, once I've done the small ends, I've got to balance all the rods anyway, or just at least check the weights. So when we've faced off here, what we've got to do is just run the little hone down the small ends and make sure that the pin slides nicely up and down there. So this is how I go about facing the small ends on the rods. I've had to do this on quite a lot of engines in the past actually. We get rods that are meant for, a lot of the time on diesels, where the small ends are not exactly what they should be, or we want to run a bit more relief. But anyway, this is how I set them up. I'm sure some of you guys in the comments will tell me that this is a terrible setup and they wouldn't do it like that, but it always works for me. You don't have to put a lot of force on here. Obviously that's a parallel. We're just literally nipping the rod down enough clamping it enough so we can just take some off the small end there, and I'm doing 1/2 mil a side. So just in the process of doing that rod there. All of these rods are done now. You can see we've got some nice lateral movement there. Just assembled this one onto this piston onto the rod. Bearings are in. I'm going to oil it up, and we're going to install these pistons and rods into the engine now. And then as soon as the clutch and flywheel arrive, we can get the crank balance and get that in, and this job is all done. Right then guys, so we have, you can see it's upside down at the moment, but we've got all the pistons in the Honda engine. Just waiting for the clutch and flywheel to arrive, then we can balance that, get the crank in, and then this one is all done. We got progress on this Cosworth here that's been waiting for the spring bases and the collets. We've managed to get all those now, so we're just getting those in, and then we can get this cylinder head on that block that is under there, and that's another one off the bench and almost finished that engine, which is great news. So in fact, it's a day after now, it's Friday, and this Cosworth head here, which I've put the you can see I put the chemical metal on the top, which a lot of you may think, oh God, that's a bit bodgy. But as I said, we cannot take any more off this. We're just doing a little 1 thou cut there, just to literally clean this off, and then that head is all done. So I'll show you in the next video what that one looks like. But in the meantime, I've got another TD5 manifold, which I've got to face. This one is bent like a banana. It's about 3 mil bent. So the chap wants me to face that, and he also wants me to put the web. Thank you very much. He also wants me to cut the webs out in between there, because I don't know what the theory is of that, but whether it sort of takes the stress out of it. But that one I've got to do, so I'll show you how I'm getting on with that one on Monday too. But until another video, guys, thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely weekend, and we will see you then. Take care.